Good morning, everyone. And now I'm pleased to introduce our next session, a presentation and conversation on academic entrepreneurship and inclusive innovation. Pleased to introduce Janine Nunes.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Janine Nunes, and it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Professor Joseph DeSimone. So Joe is the Sanjeev Sam Gambhir Professor of Translational Medicine and Chemical Engineering at Stanford University. He has appointments in the Departments of Radiology and Chemical Engineering, as well as courtesy appointments in chemistry and in the Graduate School of Business. Joe is a recent addition to the Stanford community, officially joining last year. Previously, he was a professor of chemistry at UNC Chapel Hill and chemical engineering at NC State University. So Joe has had many scientific and technological breakthroughs in the various areas, green chemistry, medical devices, nanomedicine, and 3D printing, with over 350 scientific publications and over 200 issued patents. He is a highly successful academic entrepreneur with an impressive ability to transition technology out of the academic lab. He has co-founded multiple startups, the most recent being Carbon, the additive manufacturing company based on his team's polymer 3D printing technology, CLIP, or continuous liquid interface production. Joe has received numerous awards and recognitions for his achievements in science, engineering, invention, and business. Each recognition is impressive on its own, but I really don't want to take up the time listing all of them, but I will highlight one. Joe received the National Medal of Technology and Innovation, which is the highest honor in the US for achievement and leadership in advancing technological progress. So lastly, I would say that Joe has been passionate and outspoken in his views on diversity and innovation. And I'm quoting a little bit from his website here. And he believes strongly that innovation is a social process that requires diversity. And these are not only words. Throughout his career, Joe has exemplified this through action. For example, in how he builds his teams and in his mentorship of graduate students, half of whom are women and those from underrepresented groups. So that I would like to welcome Joe to the virtual stage so that he can share his experiences and his perspectives on academic entrepreneurship and diverse innovation.
Thanks, Janine. It's great to reconnect with you. I've been reading our papers together lately. Janine was an amazing student with me and published some of the coolest papers on shape-specific particles and their self-assembly and their mobility with external fields. And I just want to let you know, Janine, we've got a high-resolution printer that's kicking butt right now. I'm not going to talk about that, but we're looking at your papers as the next phase of a direction for us here at Stanford. So I appreciate more than ever the work that you did with us. So thank you for including me here. Based on the discussions with the team here, just thought I would put some things in perspective. And I've had a great run. I'm old now, and it's at the end of the day, this is all about student achievement, and just had a really terrific group of students and postdocs in North Carolina. Was there for 30 years. They hired me when I was 25 as an assistant professor, and had a great run. What an amazing place North Carolina is. And throughout that whole time, a lot of activity was what called translational research, and we're really eager to move things into the marketplace. Again, mostly all student related in moving it forward, from a biodegradable stent with some interventional cardiologists at Duke, to some green chemistry at MyCell, and then molding of particles, mostly in medicine for Liquidia, We have a new battery, a solid state and elastomer battery company in the East Bay now in Natasha Balsera, and then a pancreatic cancer company in North Carolina using iontophoresis for local drug delivery called Advanced Chemotherapy Technologies, and in Carbon. And I led Carbon for, I founded it, was CEO. I told the investors asked me to be CEO. I told them all the reasons why it's terrible for a faculty member to lead a company. And they ignored that. And I agreed to do it for a year and ended up doing it for over 6 years. And then I traded places with my lead director, Ellen Coleman, who was a former CEO of DuPont. And she's leading the company now, and I'm chairman of the board. And so I got my life back, so to speak, because being CEO is hard. It's 24/7 for 6 years, literally, and it's very intense. And there's a lot of responsibility as CEO that are different than academia. You know, when I would walk into the parking lot at Carbon and see all the cars, and we had almost 500 employees, you know, all I saw were mortgage payments, college tuition payments, people that left great companies to come to work for Carbon. A lot more responsibility as CEO than as a professor, and that puts a pit in your stomach, and it's very intense. But you know, having gotten my life back, and I'm on the faculty here now at Stanford, and I'm on the board of trustees of National Geographic, which I really enjoy, and a really important organization, one of the oldest for teaching and education. This is a very old picture, and first crop of students there. But I think the point is that this is a people enterprise that we're all part of. And I've had amazing fortunes to have really terrific students and postdocs over the years that have really enriched the academic enterprise and the innovation process. And the people side of this equation is really critical. And you know, it's in all different types of organizations that at the end of the day, it's all about people. And the dancing group on the left, those are software engineers. They sing to a different tune than others, but that's another hour-long story. But great groups of people throughout. And at the end of the day, what you really just cherish are the memories with being in the trenches with this great group of people, making a difference wherever it's at. And this is my new team at Stanford. Really terrific group of students from all different departments in engineering, material science, chemical engineering, bioengineering, chemistry, computer science, mechanical engineering, and we work at the interface between engineering and medicine. But what I wanted to share with you is a perspective that at the end of the day, back to the people side, it's all about your values. And you'll see this poster on our website. We put together, and we built off other things on the internet, but we put together things that were important to us. And I think in any organization, it's really important to be clear about one's values, ultimately so that you can become a destination for excellence wherever it is. That people will see the opportunity for them to be included in your organization, and they will seek you out, because there's a lot of choices out there. And I think in a competitive marketplace, you know, recognizing that diversity is a fundamental tenet of innovation, and fighting for people is a really key part of this. And on the innovation side, you know, we like to be doing translational research, and in particular, I love this quote from Henry Rosofsky. You know, research is an expression of faith in the possibility of progress. The drive that leads scholars to study a topic has to include the belief that new things can be discovered, that newer can be better, and that a greater depth of understanding is achievable. Research, especially academic research, is a form of optimism about the human condition. And I love the positioning that Henry outlines. And it's really what drives us, whether we're working on infectious diseases, advanced materials for batteries, or all sorts of applications. There's so many opportunities out there. And, I think it's also reflective of when each of us thinks about where we want to play and how we want to win. I think on the innovation side, Clay Christensen, who was amazing, he's passed now, had an amazing book in Innovator's Dilemma. He talked about three kinds of innovations: disruptive innovations, sustaining innovations, and efficiencies. And since we're talking about innovations, I thought I would just put this into an economic context. And Clay would talk about disruptive innovations being those long-term perspective on innovations that maybe take years, decades to realize the fruits of the investments, but create jobs by the millions. And you can think about whether it's telecommunications and the internet, or investments in DNA and RNA leading to what we're living in today. All sorts of examples that have created entire new categories and millions of jobs. Sustaining innovations are just as important, and to keep industries vibrant. And so you think about even the automotive industry, right? And massive changes right now to electric vehicles. It's going to disrupt all the drivetrain companies in the Midwest and the like. But it's going to create different kinds of jobs. And so there's no net new jobs, but it's keeping industry sectors vibrant and important. And those are kind of innovations are important. And thirdly, there's efficiency innovations, which, are really important too, but it's a bit scary because they have huge investments, but they often cut jobs by the tens of millions. And, whether they're automation and robotics, it's one element, one could argue, but also AI is going to really impact a lot of white collar jobs, so to speak. And so it's just important to put in context, where do you play? Where do you fit in? I would argue I'm somewhere in all of those that play a role on the economy. And, part and parcel of this too is recognizing that the convergence of disciplines plays a key role. And I think a lot of us here know this by now for sure. I think there's a bit of recognition, it's probably worth putting a punctuation point on, is that this goes well beyond the convergence of life sciences, physical sciences, and engineering, which MIT, really promulgated a while back. But I think this convergence leads to one to think about extending to the social sciences, humanities, and performing arts, and that this can be a massive roadmap for innovation going forward. And just one example, if your expertise is engineering buildings to be earthquake proof, and that's your forte, and you want to have an impact in Haiti, for example, well, then you got to understand, the French language, the French culture, the history of the place, policy, government. And so my point is, if you really want to have an impact, you got to be thinking broadly and bring together all the different disciplines. And a lot of people have written about this. I had a fortunate opportunity to help play a role in this one here from the National Research Council. And I will tell you that these last two words, and beyond, were hard to get into this discussion. And, pulling the field beyond the traditions of life sciences, physical sciences, and engineering to recognize that big impacts come when you go beyond, these disciplines, as I just mentioned. And, lots of people have gotten this right. Apple continues to transform our lives. Steve Jobs talked about it's in Apple's DNA that technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with the liberal arts, married with the humanities, that yields us a result that makes our hearts sing. And you just look at the kinds of people that they hire from all different kinds of fields, playing a massive role in getting a sense of where they're going. And what happens here is that, I think this idea of convergence requires people to recognize, with their role on teams. And there's been this metaphor of I-shaped people and T-shaped people, where somebody's deep in a given discipline, but that can laterally collaborate with folks. And I think the higher calling today are pie-shaped or cone-shaped people that, combining immunology and material science, for example, and going deep in these subjects. And And what that requires is being more multilingual than a common language. A common language tends to dumb things down, but multilingual really gets to the heart of many subjects, and it's a higher calling in so many ways. And part of that too is also recognizing that we have to be clear with one another about not only what we know, but what we don't know. And there aren't many organizations, unfortunately, that people have the vulnerable trust to be clear about what they don't know. And if you're not clear about what you don't know, you have challenges that can build and create bigger challenges if they're not addressed early. So I would always tell, especially at Carbon, when we had a lot of new engineers coming in, let's not kid ourselves. Let's just be brutally clear about what we know and what we don't know, because if things we don't know cascade and all of a sudden everyone around the table doesn't know what's happening, it's a problem. And so, but it takes a vulnerable trust so that things you don't know are not held against you. It's really important. Now, I switch gears a little bit, but not too much. In the early 90s, I got a chance to be part of an innovation committee in a large chemical company. And I flew in overseas to this meeting. And this is not a photo of that meeting, but it wasn't too dissimilar. It was a large room that was pretty sterile. And it was all white guys around the table. And and unfortunately I've been in too many meetings where it's like that. But for me, this was again in the early 90s when I was just launching my academic career. And I recognized very quickly that the room was buzzing. And I realized that, everyone in the room around a table graduated from the same 2 research groups in their academic pursuits before they got to this company. And they knew each other. They knew exactly the same stuff as each other knew. And that's why they were buzzing and in resonance. And I couldn't break into this conversation. And it dawned on me that this group was at a structural disadvantage for being the innovation committee just by the way they were constructed. And again, as an innovation committee, you got to think about your teams and your organizations. And so back to values and thinking about that, my group's always been quite diverse at Carolina and NC State, and now here at Stanford. And we had a meeting that I was a keynote lecturer, back 20 years ago or so. And it was at a time when the Confederate flag was sitting on top of the Capitol. It's the state of South Carolina, and this meeting was going to be in South Carolina, down in Charleston, I think. And the NAACP had a boycott of the state because of the flag. And we were about to go to this meeting, and I brought it up to my group and said, look, I'm not sure we should be going to this. What do you all think? And we had a good, healthy conversation about it, sort of radical transparency about it all. And we ended up writing a letter, a confidential, quiet letter to the organizers of the meeting, and said, look, we love this meeting. It's our meeting, but we're not going to go because we don't feel comfortable, and we're going to honor the embargo. And the organizers came back and said, wait a minute, a lot of people paid. You're the lead. And we said we're not. And they came back to us a few weeks later and said they're going to move the meeting. And it dawned on me, how powerful our little perspective was. And then C&E News picked up this article and wrote this, picked up this idea, wrote this article. And what became clear is we became a destination for excellence through this. And that sort of honed our thinking about why it's important to be clear about one's values. And, as you recognize that, at the end of the day, we learn the most from those that we have the least in common with. And I think we all get that from a disciplinary point of view, but it's also from a human point of view. And, I can tell you that I've had a lot of young people join my group that grew up with not much money, and they think about problem solving very differently than somebody that grew up with a lot of money. And if you're trying to harness ideas, and that's your goal, and you're driving innovation, and you got to think about your communities that you're setting up and be intentional about human diversity as well as disciplinary diversity. And a lot of people have written about this. Scott Page, diversity is fundamental tenet of innovation. Progress depends as much on our collective differences as it does on our individual IQs, and how diverse groups of problem solvers outperform the groups of the best individuals at solving complex problems. It's well documented that this, human diversity and disciplinary diversity plays really important roles on the innovation process. And for us, the innovation process is also a translational activity. And I love this quote from Goethe, knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. And, 90% of graduate schools learning how to get stuff done and then the other percent is asking great questions. For us, it's the translation to the marketplace. It gives us a lot of satisfaction in trying to make a difference, and it spawns new ideas. It's a virtuous cycle of innovation that happens. And what's interesting about ideas is, I love this book from Peter Thiel. Now, Peter's a controversial figure, but this book 0 to 1 is really terrific, and it talks about ideas. And Peter frames ideas into two categories. A 0 to 1 idea is a novel, seminal breakthrough idea, and a 1 to N idea is an incremental idea that builds on the seminal idea. And his point is that at the core of some of the most important ideas, the 0 to 1 ideas, at the core of that is often a truth that very few people agree with you on. And I get that. It's the renegade, the rebel idea. Now, there's another important message. Remember, vision without resources is a hallucination. And that's so true. We all know we're all in the grantsmanship side. And what if you have an idea that you alone believe in and nobody else does, and you submit a proposal to NIH where you need like 10 excellence, and if you get 9 excellence and 1 very good, you're dead. That is really impactful and negative. And I think our funding organizations, feed upon this 1 to N version. But what's different too is when you go down to Sand Hill Road, and Sand Hill Road's a metaphor for where the venture capitalists are, and it's a real road, but it's you can see all the venture capitalists there. You can go see 9, 10 venture capitalists, and you can get 9 no's and 1 yes, and you're in the game. It's a very different environment. And so this idea that you can have progress, and I guess the point is, when you think about money and you're trying to convince people of a plan to build a different future, you got to think about where you're playing in the game for resourcing dollars. And unfortunately, the academic pursuits of NIH, for example, the average age of a person for a first R01 is now 43 years old. And I don't know the data, but it's got to be like 20 something for venture capitalists. And so this is really important to recognize. And I think there are some structural problems in the system that we all play in academia that are worth further attention. Another point to realize is that, as Roger Porter, I think, said, that strategy is all about being different. And I think that's really critical. And my great friend Holden Thorpe is a big fan of saying that. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. So when we think about translating these ideas and these teams, recognizing that the best design teams are the most diverse, mentorship and apprenticeships are essential. Strategy is all about being different. The most fertile ground lies between fields. Partnerships are critical. Don't be incremental. And this is a contact sport. So maybe hit a little chemical engineering here and pivot. We got involved in using liquid and supercritical CO2 as a medium for conducting chemical reactions, in particular polymerization reactions, which are diffusion controlled and free radical processes, and avoid water and organic solvents and water and surfactants like PFAS agents used to make fluorocarbons. And we did this in a surfactant-free mode, and we worked with DuPont. DuPont's a complex organization. Some elements within DuPont love what we're doing. Others loved having a plant operating the old way. And this has been the slowest train wreck with these fluorinated surfactants out there, but we had an alternative to that. We also got involved in some liquid forms of Teflon that look a lot like silicones, but were fluorocarbons and could be photochemically cross-linked. And we got into some microfluidic work with Steve Quake as solvent-resistant microfluidics as alternatives to silicones. We started using that to mold, watching what everything like George Whitesides and John Rogers were doing, and started molding surfaces, and then ultimately started using these molds to make particles. And as Janine can tell you, molding, you had to really want the particles to get them because it was a lot of work. And then a company called Liquidia scaled it up. And we can make particles of a wide range of sizes and shapes and chemistries and do everything from life sciences, material sciences. In the life sciences, these particles became really useful for understanding the role of size and shape and chemical composition and mechanics. We could design particles that once they got in an intracellular environment, they could release RNA. And so we and others were heavily focused on RNA. And I wasn't a big fan of lipids because they were dynamic, but obviously lipids work great. And thank goodness lipids panned out because it really saved us here in this pandemic. Liquidia is on the publicly traded. They got really focused on pulmonary medicines and dry powder inhalers, and they got a couple products in the clinic. But back to the story of these fluorocarbons, these liquid perfluoropolyethers got us into some combinations with hydrophilic materials. And then it led to some collaborations with Natasha Balsera in safe batteries. And we've pivoted away from the fluorocarbons now, but we've got a really terrific company, Blue Current, that Natasha is playing the lead role with. Safe batteries that are fast recharging based on silicon heavily is really a great opportunity there. And Blue Current's the name of the company. But these amorphous fluoropolymers also became really valuable for the whole area of 3D printing. And paper we published, a TED Talk, and a company, Carbon. And so just to quickly walk you through Carbon here in the next couple of minutes. We launched Carbon. I raised over $680 million. Terrific investors, terrific team, great board members, a great leadership team now under Ellen Coleman's leadership, 50% women leadership in the company. My son is co-founder with me and heads up product there. And it's really about digital manufacturing and transforming how people make things. And we developed a 3D printing process that's 100 to 1,000 times faster, and also really great materials. And basically, it's a process that uses light and oxygen, and it's patterned light, as you'll see emerge here at the bottom, to rapidly grow parts that are unmoldable, and gets into geometries that are unmoldable, and really opens up the door to rapid translation of products from idea to scale. And we've had really good fortunes in being able to do that. And there's a lot of fluid mechanics and reaction engineering and a full digital twin and simulations to get this right, and a lot of material science. We're working on degradable, chemically degradable and recyclable systems and biodegradable systems, and materials that are useful in electronics, materials are useful and we had a paper come out in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences yesterday on microneedles. But I will lead you on a video here because I know we're running out of time. And let me just play this very short video.
We salute all those who believe good enough is never good or enough. Those who pursue excellence for themselves and for our planet. At Carbon, we apply our craft using science and technology to push limits and realize products unmatched in performance. Our difference is one you feel, and it is light years ahead of anything else out there. You feel it in running shoes that control energy with every stride. Saddles that enhance your performance and comfort mile after mile. Helmets that increase your protection every time you take the field. Clear aligners and dentures that improve oral health and give you more than a few reasons to smile. Crafted by Carbon is a promise. It stands for dedication and focus to crafting what you and our planet truly need. Ongoing creation of amazing answers to our toughest questions. We salute the leaders, dreamers, and doers who keep creation in motion, who boldly imagine a brighter future and craft it every day.
Great. So at the end of the day, this is all about people, as I mentioned, and I think painting a vision of the future. And for us, it's all about deep tech, bringing different disciplines together and building great teams and great business models in technologies that people want. And I've really enjoyed that. And it's an honor to be here with you guys today. Thanks, Janine.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe, for a great talk, for sharing your insight and perspective into academic entrepreneurship and saying a little bit about your varied companies. So I just want to remind the audience that you can post your questions in the Q&A. So at this point, I'm going to start reading a couple of those for Joe. So first, in your view, why has it been so difficult to enhance diversity in STEM faculty?
Well, the pipeline's broken at a lot of different phases. And I also think that, look, when you walk down a hallway and all you see are portraits of white guys, what kind of message is that sending? I think there's too much history here. And, a lot of people have been focused on trying to make a difference, but it frankly hasn't changed very much, even in my career. And so I'm a big fan of Deborah Rawlison's view. Deborah is at the Naval Research Labs, and she's always, follow the money. And, Title IX has been really impactful in athletics, but I think if you read the law, Title IX doesn't just focus on athletics; it's federal funding. And I think if you, I think there are ways to be using the current laws to look at discrimination in all its forms, and not just in athletics. And I think that's a direction that I would be thinking about.
Yeah. All right. So the next question is insight for grad students and postdocs. So what advice would you offer for grad students and postdocs who want to spin out their work?
It's got to be differentiated. I love Bob Langer's sort of formula, paper and science, important, patent, go. And, and repeat the process. He's great at that. So there's that's like a great formula. But, I think it's got, not every idea is a good idea though. And it's all about team. I've seen A teams with C-level technologies win. And I've seen A technologies with C-level teams bomb. Mm. And so you got to make sure you've got the right team in place. And you're going to make mistakes, and don't, try not to make many, but learn from your mistakes. Don't lose your integrity. We're watching Theranos right now, and a terrible example where companies got lost in ethics. Ethical risk is just as important as market risks and technological risks. And it's something to think about.
Yeah. Well, so to kind of follow up on that, so how can we best support academic entrepreneurs who are starting their first companies? So, what is most important in terms of skills, education, mentorship, connections that we can give to help them ensure success as founders?
Yeah, I would say yes to all that. I think actually, and now I'm at Stanford. I was with OTL, the Office of Technology Licensing, this morning. Stanford's a machine. It was amazing. Stanford's well off. Princeton's well off. Unfortunately, that matters a lot. I think one of the most important things, well, take this for example. If I've got a faculty colleague and she and her students invent a new way to treat cancer, cervical cancer, pancreatic cancer, whatever, glioblastoma, and there's a rush to publish, And there's a lot of people say, publish, put it in the put it in the marketplace, open source it. That's good for everybody. Well, the problem is, if you do that, you've missed the opportunity to file a patent. And if it's not patented, the $100 million, the $500 million of follow-on investment won't happen. And that technology will languish. So what's the moral imperative, to publish or to actually patent and publish? And to patent takes money. And so I actually think that the overhead rates with the federal government should actually be increased to accommodate really effective patenting. To society wants us to protect what the investments, and I think that's a direction to go.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a question about why did you locate Carbon to Silicon Valley? So the Valley has a reputation for not being welcoming to Black founders, and are you aware of any change that is taking place?
I moved Carbon to Silicon Valley because it was at the I think chemically intensive companies do really well in RTP. I think software intensive companies do well. We see SaaS, Apple's moved there now, and it's changing, but we're at the intersection of hardware, software, and chemistry. And I thought, my founding VP of engineering at Carbon was the founding VP of engineering at Tesla. And we hired over 50 ex-Tesla employees. Lots of former Google and other employees too. And so I thought it was great to go fast and go big and to raise enormous amounts of money. I don't think that's possible in North Carolina like it was in California. The point is an important one regarding diversity. California is very strong on immigrants, and a lot of founders are immigrants out here. It's really interesting, rich, dynamic. It is a male-dominated community, and it stems from the male domination at the VCs. Mm-hmm. And when a VC invests in you, they get a board seat, and that's why so many of the boards are dominated. And so we got to diversify the VCs as an important step in diversifying the boards and governance at our companies.
Okay, so there's another question about how do you recommend that we break into the current VC field, which is largely a table of similar people buzzing with similarities?
Yeah, I think the importance is networking and network people that have been there, done that, and partnering. Every one of us owes a reach back to somebody else and help pull them along, and that's an important mechanism. I think there's a lot of venture communities that are diversifying too, which will play an important role, and understand the culture of those. But it's still an ongoing problem. But I think networking is one of the best ways to, with people that have been there, done that, that believe in you, that believe in your story and your technology and your approach and your integrity are key.
Right. Yeah, mentorship is certainly important in this. So another question. So this one is, in your view, what is the next great breakthrough? Don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, it's driven by market needs. I feel like one day we're going to pick up science and there's going to be a breakthrough in solar efficiency that's going to be high, really high. And then, imagine if energy were free, how that would change the planet. I mean, that's got to be rich. AI is transforming everything. There's going to be an RNA economy. I think 3D printing is going to drive a lot of things. So those are the big places, where you're going to play and how you're going to win. But at the end of the day, it's all about great people and great teams applying their craft to lots of different areas.
Okay, so I think we're going to do one more quick question. And you alluded to this earlier. So the question is about what about those working at colleges or universities that aren't as well resourced as Stanford and Princeton? What do they do?
Yeah, it's harder. And it's just harder. I think it's important to recognize it's harder. And demands on faculty are higher than ever. And the pandemic has just reinforced that, with the work from home and childcare is a problem. And, Yeah, I'm not sure. I think mentorship is key, but people need release time to be mentored.
Yeah.
Right? You can't expect everybody to continue just doing more stuff. I think the system is at a crucial point in time right now, and I worry about it. I worry about my colleagues at lots of places. But I think that I'm hopeful that the government and the new initiatives that the federal funding are going to recognize just how demanding things are for the academics institutions across the diversity of approaches that we find in this richness that we have across the United States in this regard.
Okay, so with that, I just want to say thank you again, Joe, for an amazing session. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Don now.
Janine, I got to talk. Your papers are front and center for me right now, so we absolutely got to work on that. And I'm glad to see somebody's asking me tell me here about Go Birds. The Eagles got a big game this weekend, and my heart's on the East Coast, that's for sure.
And with that in mind, thank you for joining us from the West Coast. And Janine, thank you for joining us from the East Coast. Our next session will start at 12:30. Again, Joe and Janine, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.